Patino himself, in a clip that we just played, said basically the stats are not backing up the team's wins.
St. John's offensive glass. That's where a lot of opportunities for St. John's came from. St. John's does not shoot the basketball well. It might even be fair to say they shoot it poorly. They were 3 of 16 from deep last night, but it doesn't seem to matter to them.
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you've got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
In a short format tournament like this, like the Olympics, now this is even smaller, only 4 teams. Who's got the best goaltending? Over, you're talking 3 round robin games and then a knockout with 4 teams. So you're playing 5 games.
I'm not sold yet, Mike, on the USA stuff, on the merch, but I think I'm sold on the USA at least being in the final.
Only on SportsGrid.
Live right here as we welcome you to hour number 3 on this Tuesday morning, our third and final on the Early Line on SportsGrid. He is Donnie, I am Ben. Here's what you have in store for this third and final hour. Plenty of NBA conversations, including a focus on the Lakers and what their ceiling of success looks like this season after Luka Doncic made his debut in the purple and gold last night in downtown Los Angeles. We'll talk a 4-game NBA slate on this Tuesday and an awesome Tuesday night slate in college basketball. DRS is ready. John Rothstein will be here to end out this third hour as well on a Tuesday. Tom Vecchio, the prop perspective, and a little bit of action on the ice to pay attention to as well. Donnie, so much to get into here in this third and final hour that we'll have some handicaps, some picks, and some previews.
I love it, too. Look, I get a little bit extra time off to prep for the radio here on Tuesday, so extra enjoyable for me at that point. So we enjoy hour number 3 to set the table for the rest of the day, which includes where the public's going and also just pointing you in the right direction is what we do in the morning, Ben. That's what we're here for.
Absolutely so, Donnie. That is our charge. That is our task. So last night, Luka Doncic played in his first game officially now as a Los Angeles Laker. 24 minutes for Doncic in his first game since Christmas Day. Only 14 points, 5 of 14 from the floor, just 1 of 7 from deep. He admitted before he had nerves before a basketball game for the first time in a very long time. And yet, although it wasn't Luka's best game, the Lakers still won, hammering the poor Utah Jazz 132-113. The Lakers have won 6 straight, 9 of their last 10. Because of these winning ways, DRS, LA in the 4th spot in the Western Conference standings as of this moment. So now with LeBron and Luka in LA, how far will the Lakers go this season? That was the question for all of you in Fade the Public. At SportsGrid on Twitter, how far will the Los Angeles Lakers go this season? Your 4 options: NBA champs, reaching the NBA Finals, getting to the Western Conference Finals, or an exit from the postseason in the opening round or round number 2. Despite the win last night with Luka in the purple and gold, despite 6 straight wins for the Lakers. Despite being the 4 seed currently in the Western Conference standings, Donnie, most of the public still feels the Lakers are not getting past the Western Conference semifinals, a round 2 exit at absolute maximum. 59% of the public voting for that option. Are you fading them, DRS?
Look, the way I look at the Lakers, talented team, absolutely. Superstar power needed to win rounds in the playoffs, absolutely, they have that. But also understand this, as we talked about the Western Conference, it's not as deep as it once was. So theoretically, the Lakers sit 10.5 games back from OKC. They're not going to catch OKC. But you know who they can catch? The Memphis Grizzlies, who, a 1.5 lead over them, or 2.5 game lead, and then you have the Nuggets, a 1.5 lead. Let's just say the Lakers play good basketball down the stretch and wind up with the number 2 seed. Why can't they get to the Western Conference Finals to take on OKC? That's the problem. If they do slip back even further, that means maybe a faster matchup against OKC. So in the vote for me, I do think they can get to the Western Conference Finals along with the 22%. Yeah. I didn't vote that way. I went round 1 or 2, which means I expect them to win round number 1. They might face a tougher opponent in 2 and dip out at that point, but it is close to me between Western Conference and rounds 1 or 2. If they can improve this in their stats, of course, move up the standings, yes, it increases their chances to get to the Western Conference Finals. But for me, if I vote, I'm not fading the public. I went with the 59% rounds 1 or 2 for the Lakers.
51 games so far this year for the Lakers. They are now 32-19. They have won 6 straight. So 49.5, the updated win total for Los Angeles. That would be 18 more wins to go over that number in their final 31 games of this season. That would be a pretty solid mark to get there. 18-13 in their final 31 games. You would think they could certainly do that given the hot streak they are on. And as Luka Doncic gets back onto the floor and even more in the fold in Los Angeles. Donnie, this was billed as a move for the future for the Lakers. They now have their next young, budding international superstar in Los Angeles, Hollywood, made for stars for the next decade plus. Luka Doncic is only 25 years old. I don't think it's just a future move. LeBron James, at 40, in year 22, is still going out there and basically leading the Lakers night in, night out, putting up a 25, 8-7 night like it's his day job, of which it is. Yeah, the Lakers lost Mark Williams in their physical or in the failed physical. Sure, maybe they don't have that big that they would want in the front court at the center spot, which they really have not had all season long. I still think the Lakers are capable of getting to the Western Conference Finals. I better think that. I bet them at a 9-1 price to win the West after the acquisition of Luka Doncic. And Donnie, I shared as we looked at the Western Conference odds early on. I think those 3 best prices, the Thunder at even money, the Nuggets second best price at plus 550, Denver's won 7 straight, 3 seed in the Western Conference, and the Lakers at a 9-1 number. I do think those will be 3 of the 4 teams that get to the second round of the Western Conference postseason. If I think the Lakers have that as their floor in terms of playoff success, then I do believe they can be in the Western Conference Finals, making that 9-1 price, I bet, last weekend after the Luka Doncic deal. Probably be pretty good to cash out or find some positive profits at that stage.
Exactly. And as I pointed out already, once you do get to the playoffs, it benefits you if you're an older player. You don't have to have that quick response to your legs and, oh, man, I got to play tomorrow night. Like LeBron James is the perfect example. We worry about LeBron in the regular season, and he's been phenomenal once again. But how much gas does he have left in the tank? How about if he twists an ankle or has those nagging injuries here? If you can get him clean to the playoffs, which the ability of Luka to be there now for LeBron James to maybe take a little bit more time off or maybe on those back-to-backs, not have to play all of those there, that's going to help down the stretch. So a superstar to help out another superstar. We used to talk about the big 3s. This big 2 should be good enough as long as they're healthy. And once they do get to the playoffs, the big 2 as veterans get to rest a lot more than they do in the regular season.
And arguably, you have 2 guys around the association that have been the best postseason performers we have seen. Luka Doncic right now is averaging nearly 31 points per game in his playoff career. He has had to do everything for Dallas, and still that wasn't good enough to stay in the state of Texas. But 30.9 points per game for Doncic, second highest scoring average in NBA history in the postseason, behind only who? MJ. Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
Luka Doncic has been that playoff performer already, paired with LeBron James in some depth overall for the Lakers. I think they can give anybody a test in the Western Conference, including the Oklahoma City Thunder. So I'm still feeling pretty good about my 9-1 price for the Lakers, despite the fact it has not moved, and in fact did move back by about $1.50 after the Mark Williams trade was rescinded. Donnie, I'm not sure you saw this based on reports last night, but there's always the negative, of course, to a trade being rescinded, not only losing out on Mark Williams, but the uncomfortable and awkward thing of Dalton Connect having to come back to L.A. He did not play last night for what was listed as personal reasons. It's got to be tough to sit there on the bench and just be like, I'm back here. This team didn't even want me.
I mean, the guy probably doesn't even have an apartment lease anywhere. Probably broke the lease. That's costing him money. Girlfriend was angry. He left. Maybe she already has somebody new in her life that quickly over that 48 hours.
Wow.
You never know, Ben, what you guys are going through personal life-wise out there. You know what I mean? Come on, stuff. You can't judge people in their worst moments right now.
Listen, I still believe that Connect 4 will be out there for the Lakers and hopefully making a difference. He's had a pretty solid start to his NBA career. Even money for OKC to win the West, by the way. This is where it stands, right? Even money favorite, Thunder in the Western Conference, plus 100. Minus money favorite, minus 125 for the reigning champs in the Boston Celtics in the Eastern Conference. Plus 260 for that to be the exact NBA Finals matchup, if that's even value at this stage. Prop perspective with Tom Vecchio next.
Slow play drum beat grows louder and louder every week, to the point now that they're making overt references to it on the broadcast.
So there's plenty of other guys that have to get faster. Tom definitely is more deliberate in his conversations, always has been since he's been on tour. I just think about Joe Scavern, when those two started working together, how their conversations always seem to just keep on going and going.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
I can't take Boston at minus 110. I don't see the value in it, right? You're getting minus money. If Boston were to turn around and become even money or a plus 105 or plus 110, yeah, I can understand you want to take that. So because of the value at 5.5 to 1, I got to like the Knicks and their chances of coming out of the East.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
In a short format tournament like this, like the Olympics, now this is even smaller, only 4 teams. Who's got the best goaltending? You're talking 3 round robin games and then a knockout with 4 teams. So you're playing 5 games.
I'm not sold yet, Mike, on the USA stuff, on the merch, but I think I'm sold on the USA at least being in the final.
Only on SportsGrid.
Patino himself, in a clip that we just played, said basically the stats are not backing up the team's wins.
St. John's offensive glass. That's where a lot of opportunities for St. John's came from. St. John's does not shoot the basketball well. It might even be fair to say they shoot it poorly. They were 3 of 16 from deep last night. But it doesn't seem to matter to them.
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
TV Tom Vecchio for that prop perspective to start off a new week, live right here on a Tuesday on the early line on SportsGrid. One final recap, Tom, of Super Bowl 59, and then we'll look forward to what we will see this week. Around the association and on the ice, we need your guidance for the 4 nations, I believe is what they are calling it in the world of hockey. The jack of all trades is here for that prop perspective, and Tom, we thank you very much as always.
Of course, thanks for having me. Football season is done. We can take a quick look back on that, a quick preview of the Super Bowl odds for next season. Already briefly touched on those on the Super Bowl recap show that I did in studio. We can dive into some hockey, not the NHL, as you said, the Four Nations face-off, NBA. Nope. Let's get to it.
Let's dive right in, Vecchio. Let's look back on Super Bowl 59 on Sunday night in New Orleans. Vecchio, any football game, really any game in general, but any football game specifically, we show you the odds in the preview and the breakdown for it, and I ask a question. When you look at the prop market, how do you expect this game to play out based on the spread, total, all of that? Well, the odds for Super Bowl 59 expected a very tight game in one that would feature around 50 points. Not exactly the game we saw in the Superdome on Sunday night. The Eagles in a rout 40-22. So, Vecchio, what did that mean for you, your Super Bowl wagers, and how the prop bets ended up going on Sunday?
Some of it was really good. Some of it was bad. I was spot on with Pacheco not playing a role in the running game, and the Chiefs just didn't run the ball overall. Some of that was just game script. Some of that was just their inability to do so. I want to say I was directionally right on Mahomes' passing attempts. He didn't get there. Obviously, some of the drives were cut short by the interceptions, and obviously a lot of that is credit to the Eagles' defense at a certain point. Didn't necessarily get there with the yards for Dallas Goedert. He was, 2 for 2 on catches. He did have 27 yards. I would like to say maybe if the game was a little bit closer, he would have, a few more bites at the apple. He only had the 2 targets. But again, very good stuff from him when he had the ball. Did come through on a Hopkins TD. That wasn't, the best thing just because of the game script. I would like to see him involved, Dallas Goedert a little more involved, et cetera, et cetera. But I would say it was a great game. And honestly, it's credit to the Eagles that they went out and acquired players dating all the way back to getting A.J. Brown. They drafted well. They signed Saquon, et cetera, et cetera. Like, they built the team from the top down. Everyone was pulling in the same direction, like a full team effort. And frankly, the defense as a whole should have gotten the MVP.
Yeah, I agree with that, too, because you take a look at the Eagles, that March 4th, that's still a young defense moving forward. Only Nakobe Dean was down. So when you get to the Super Bowl as a healthy football team, you can do some damage. But let's look towards next year already, Tom. And yesterday, Ben and I were going over some of these numbers. Changes at the FanDuel Sportsbook. The Eagles now, the favorites at a 6-1 price to win the Super Bowl next season, followed by the Chiefs, Ravens, Bills, and Lions. Who gets your attention right away when turning the page already to 2025?
Yeah, as I said on the Super Bowl recap show right after the game, it's got to be the Bengals, right? And this comes down to Joe Burrow being awesome. And what everyone talked about this year was he just needs a competent defense. Like, the offense is amazing. Like, he doesn't need some world-class defense that is top 5 in the league, top 3 in the league. If you just give him a competent, average, maybe even slightly above average defense, the Bengals would have made the playoffs this year with how well he was playing. And then some of those coin flip games that they lost throughout the year, they could have had 3-4 more wins fighting for the AFC North title. Potentially could have been hosting a home playoff game. So at that number, I think the numbers for the Chiefs and the Ravens and the Bills, those are all where they should be. It's going to, I don't want to say a coin toss between them, because I would say 3-head. But we're going to be looking at the Bengals as that team to say, hey, we have good value. They can upset these teams, make moves in the offseason to give Joe Burrow a competent league average defense, and they will be a playoff team.
And that's the big question, Vecchio. The offseason ahead in Cincinnati. Are they going to pay T. Higgins? Is he gone? They need to pay Jamar Chase entering the 5th year of his NFL career. Will they do that? Mike Brown has often been stingy with the finances. How about Trey Hendrickson? He has his quarterback in Joe Burrow, basically being a politician and out there campaigning for his guys to get their extensions and their deals. A lot to be figured out in Cincinnati. With so much movement, the Bengals yesterday were 24-1, down by $6. The Niners see their price down by $2. The Eagles now the favorites in front of the Chiefs. Chiefs second best numbers alongside the Ravens at plus 650. A lot to be figured out. How about the odds for the Four Nations face-off? Canada, United States, Sweden, and Finland. The Four Nations, this in place, Tom, of the traditional NHL All-Star game. It starts tomorrow night with Canada versus Sweden. Let's talk about the format and what it means for betting the winner of the Four Nations face-off.
Yeah, so this is a round robin. We have seen a round robin format. All these teams will play each other. They'll move on past that, picking up points, obviously, based on wins, whatever it might be. Canada and U.S. have been kind of flip-flopping in terms of who's been the favorite. Canada jumped ahead as the favorite as we got the news that Quinn Hughes, one of the top defensemen for the USA, brother of Jack Hughes, he's going to miss it just due to injury. A lot of these teams are getting replacement players in. So to see Canada as the favorite isn't too much of a surprise. The general consensus is that it's probably USA is the strongest team overall. Canada, a very close number 2, then Sweden, then Finland as being the weakest team as of now. And a lot of it comes down to USA has the best goaltender in the world right now, at least who's playing in this tournament with Connor Hellebuyck. Goaltending has been the issue for Canada, and the forwards for Canada we know are obviously immensely talented with McDavid, McKinnon, et cetera, but the defense and the goaltending for the U.S. is what should put them ahead.
I love this tournament. Like, you want to get rid of the All-Star game every year and play this year, because the one thing that you do know is, let's just say it winds up with Canada versus U.S. That's not an All-Star game. They're going to take this seriously. Mm-hmm. So you can bet on this and get some edges, Tom. Where are you going with some of the top props here for the tournament?
Yeah, let's start off. Let's actually start with the game line. No props to jump into. USA -1.5 on the puck line. They're playing Finland. Finland lost their 2 top defenders, Miro Heiskanen and Rasmus Ristolainen. So what was already considered the weakest team lost 2 of their best defenders. They're now bringing up players. One of these players that they brought in as a replacement has only played 18 games in the NHL this season. So the USA can, and I also like the game total over 5.5. So the USA can score 5 goals by themselves. And if that's the case, maybe they let in 1 or 2, but they should be able to cover the puck line at -1.5 and the game total going over. And then when it comes to Cale Makar, I like him to win MVP. This is instead of taking a direct future on Canada, as I've mentioned, plenty of times, whether it's Super Bowl, whatever it might be. Cale Makar is the best defender in the world. He's going to win the Norris this year. He did a great job at shutting down Connor McDavid in the Avs Stanley Cup run a few years ago. So because they are lacking at goaltending, if Canada is going to advance, Cale Makar will play a massive role in that.
Tom Vecchio, that's the prop perspective, even on the ice for the Four Nations face-off. Thank you. More on the early line next.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
The 2 guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun. I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Just a 4-game slate in the NBA tonight, but we preview each and every one with some college basketball mixed in over our next 2 segments. DRS, big rematch tonight from last year's postseason. Eastern Conference second round in a best-of-7 series between the New York Knicks and the Indiana Pacers. Of course, the Pacers winning that in upset fashion. 2.5-point spread tonight for this matchup in Indianapolis, working the way of New York, and a total of 239.5. Could this be a potential playoff preview? The Knicks 34-18, 3 spot in the Eastern Conference standings. The Pacers 29-22, 4 seed currently in the Eastern Conference standings. Both teams expected to make a playoff run once again. What do we see tonight in Indy?
Yeah, take a look at this, too. Opening line, -1 at the FanDuel Sportsbook here in New Jersey. And now we're seeing 2.5. Other outlets as high, Ben, as already as 3. So for me, I agree with the line movement. You're looking at both of these teams going full gas tonight. And also in a matchup that sometimes I talk about the regular season. Like you're playing before the All-Star break. We're not up against it, right, on a Thursday. Like, hey, man, got my party planned. Just looking to get out of town. This is a big game that both of these teams will be locked into. And if I'm reading the pricing accordingly, I'm willing to lay the 2.5 here. I think the Knicks go into Indiana and pick up the victory, and I'm willing to bet they get it by 3 or more tonight.
So the New York Knicks, DRS, have been booked as a favorite quite often this year. In 46 of their now, let me do some quick mental math, 52 games, 24-21-1 against the spread. The Pacers, much like last year for this Indiana team, not just a great underdog covering team, 12-9 against the spread, most of those covers, often an outright victory. The Pacers in their 12 covers as an underdog, 11 outright victories, 11-10 straight up. Indiana, the only team around the NBA at this current juncture with an outright winning record above 500 as an underdog. And last year, the Pacers played in games that featured totals like at 250. This one, 239.5, which has been a different story, DRS, for the New York Knicks. A very high over percentage, over in 31 of their 52 games this season, over in 6 of their last 7. That is not necessarily what we think of when we think of Tibbs and how he structures his defense and his rotations. But that's why the total's 239 and a hook tonight.
Yeah, and it's funny, too, because you're right about that. You used to think of the old Tibbs team, like, hey, we're going to play 5 or 6 guys. We're going to slow it down here. They're more up-tempo in this point. Indiana, certainly helpful to engage in that. I am expecting points tonight. So if you are a prop bettor, 3-point shots here, points, assists, rebounds, you name it, extra possessions in this game. So I do lean towards the over, even though it is 239.5. I just think my side is better tonight with the New York Knicks winning by a couple points.
58.8% of the games for New York over this year, 5th highest over percentage in the NBA, highest points prop, that would be Jalen Brunson at 28.5. We talked about the Western Conference odds, where the teams are standings-wise, and of course, from the odds outlook perspective, late night in the Valley. The Suns play host to the Memphis Grizzlies. 3.5-point spread in favor of the Grizz on the road. Updated from that number of 4, total now at 244. The Grizz, DRS, second best record in the Western Conference. How do you see tonight's game playing out in Phoenix?
You should be on Phoenix tonight, right? Hey, getting points at home. Kevin Durant's going to be healthy. Devin Booker's going to be healthy, but you just can't trust them. 5-5 in the last 10 games, playing average ball. You take a look at Memphis, Ben, 8-2 over their past 10 games. Lost their last game, looking to bounce back. You're just asking them to win. That 4 points there that we see on the graphic is currently 3.5 live at the FanDuel Sportsbook. And look at the total. Open up 237.5 here in New Jersey. 244 is where we're sitting now. If we're going to look at that game and that starting lineup, Morant, Bane, Wells, Jackson, and Edey, give me Memphis. This team is locked in that 2 spot right now. And if the season ended today, the Suns aren't even in the playoff picture. 11th overall as the seed. Stop it. Give me Memphis.
Of course, a tumultuous year for Ja Morant last season. Suspension, injury. The Grizz weren't all that great, 27-55. But the 2 years prior, they won at least 51 games and were the 2 seed in the Western Conference, which is where they would be right here, right now, if the season ended today, and have a great shot of doing so. Donnie, not just from an overall perspective, would the Suns be on the outside looking in even at the play-in tourney in the Western Conference? We also have a matchup tonight between the best cover team in the NBA, Memphis, 34-18 ATS this year, and the worst cover team in the association, the Suns, 18-33-1 against the spread, 35.3% cover percentage, the worst in the NBA. A couple other games around the association to preview on the other side of the break. Then we'll talk college basketball. Huge Tuesday night slate. DRS has some thoughts next on the early line.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
You want me to solve all this tush-push and fourth down malarkey that goes on with the officials? Here's a crazy idea. Get rid of the worst rule in the NFL, and that is forward progress. How about this? Where I knock your ass in the ground is where the ball goes, period. Let's end this whole conversation. Like, if I drop you back 4 yards, then you lost 4 yards. If we get rid of forward progress, this tush-push and everything else is taken care of. Where I put your tail on the ground is where the ball goes. End of conversation. It's the dumbest rule and the most arbitrary rule. The only thing that is a worse call in the NFL than forward progress is the punt that goes out of bounds when you watch the official walk down the sideline having absolutely no clue where that ball crossed over. All I can think of is that Price is Right game go do-de-do-de-do, do-de-do-de-do, as he's walking down the sideline, arbitrarily trying to figure out where the ball crossed over because he's got no clue.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Four-game slate around the association. We have previewed two. Now let's get to the two others. In Philadelphia, can the 76ers ride the wave of the Eagles Super Bowl championship? Man, they're going to need to. DRS 9-point favorite at home tonight against the Raptors. The Sixers have now lost 3 in a row. The Raptors have lost 4 straight, by the way. Philadelphia is 20-32. And yet, despite being 12 games sub 500, they are only a game and a half behind the Bulls for what would be the 10 spot in the Eastern Conference standings, the 4th and final position in the play-in tournament. But Philadelphia can't just keep resting Joel Embiid and hope to even get into the play-in tourney. How critical is a win tonight at home?
It is very critical tonight. Sometimes you have to jumpstart the season. You called it out. You think you're supposed to be a good basketball team, and you're not. You are playing a bad basketball team in your own building. You had an embarrassing loss without Giannis Antetokounmpo when you took on Milwaukee before the Super Bowl, and now you're saying, okay, now's the time that we go. And usually look at the anticipated starting lineup for the Sixers, Ben, and say, man, what are they doing tonight? That's not the case tonight. It's as good as it's going to look. Maxey, Oubre, George, Edwards, and Joel Embiid in the starting lineup tonight, healthy and intact, going up against a lackluster lineup for Toronto. This line opened up in New Jersey, 7.5 as a favorite towards the Sixers. It sits at 9. I'm crazy. I'm going to take the Sixers by double digits tonight, just reading into it. Because hear me out on this. A loss tonight to Toronto. You already heard the cat calls from Joel Embiid. Hey, if this doesn't go right, I'm going to get surgery in the summer. Just get the surgery now and get ready for next year. Because if you can't beat teams like the Raptors at home, what's the point of playing the rest of the season?
Philadelphia entered the year after the acquisition and free agency of Paul George with the third best price to win the Eastern Conference. They are 20-5 and 32. They have only been a favorite 22 times because the odds makers never know who is going to be out there. They're just 7 and 15 against the spread. Need to win and cover this one tonight, I would say, DRS, to instill any bit of confidence entering the All-Star break. The Raptors were not expected to be a good team. They're 16 and 37. They have lost 4 straight. But in 53 games, they have been booked as the dog 48 times. They're 29, 18, and 1 against the spread. They're actually a really good underdog team, and they don't have a huge amount of expectations. So the Raptors not going to get into the play-in tournament. The Sixers on the outside looking in. The Bulls in that 4th and final play-in tourney spot. The 10 seed currently in the Eastern Conference. How about the Detroit Pistons? If the season ended today, Detroit would be the 6th seed in the Eastern Conference, not even needing a play-in tournament appearance to be a postseason team. Detroit 4-point favorite tonight inside the United Center against the Bulls. What are we going to see tonight in Chicago?
I think the Pistons win tonight. Like, look at the lineup. Cunningham, Hardaway Jr., Thompson, Harrison, Durant. That's a very good starting lineup overall against the Chicago Bulls team that, quite frankly, isn't so good. You're looking at that total, 238.5. We're expecting points. I expect a big night for the Pistons. I'll go on the road with Detroit basketball winning by 5+ tonight against the Chicago Bulls.
Wouldn't that be fun to see the Pistons in the Eastern Conference postseason under JB
Bring
Bickerstaff?
back Larry Brown. Bring him back.
Ben
Come on,
Wallace?
bring back the boys. Ben
Wallace
Wallace
still has
Chauncey.
You could not convince me that Ben Wallace does not have juice. Like, he goes out
Tayshaun
there,
Prince?
you put him in an NBA game today, 8 boards, bare minimum, no doubt.
Yeah. Bare minimum. Big hair, too, probably. I bet you he probably looks the same
Great
exactly today in shape-wise as he does. Oh,
Yeah.
he does? He's probably still jacked up and ready to go, though. You'd have to assume that.
For sure. No doubt about it. But he looks like a silver fox. He's looking good. 28.5, by the way, points prop for Cade Cunningham. The only other points prop in the 20-plus range is Kobe White for Chicago. 2 playoff teams, maybe, in the Eastern Conference tonight. DRS, new college basketball, AP Top 25 released yesterday. The AP poll on the men's side. Look at the top. Number 1, Auburn, who despite losing at home to Florida over the weekend, remains at number 1. I don't have an issue with that. Number 2, Alabama. These 2 teams set to play on Saturday in Tuscaloosa. Not just the Iron Bowl rivalry, now on the hardwood in basketball, but DRS, 1 versus 2 in the AP poll for the first time since November 2021 in men's college basketball. For the first ever time in SEC men's hoops history. A historic day ahead is what we are expecting Saturday afternoon in Tuscaloosa at Coleman Coliseum.
Yeah, throw up that graphic again, because let's analyze the SEC and what's going down, Ben. See that number 1 team? Tell me who that is. It's Auburn. Where they play, Ben? What conference?
The SEC.
Answer it. All right, number 2, Alabama. Where are we at?
The SEC.
Number 3, Florida. Where are we at? Number 5, where are we at? Tennessee. The SEC no longer a football conference? We got to love this. This is fantastic. Now, also, it's when we get to the conference tournament coming up, that'll be fun. Then the March Madness. Are we at the point now where you used to say to other guy, hey, the attrition in the Big 12, you beat each other up, you have nothing left in the gas tank by the time you get to the NCAA tournament? Nonsense.
Sure.
These teams are going to be sharpened by iron by the time they get there. We're buying the SEC this year in men's college basketball.
4 of the top 5 teams from the SEC. By the way, Tennessee plays Kentucky tonight. We'll talk about that in just a moment. 9 teams in the top 25 as well. Donnie, we had these debates, right, in the college football playoff, first year of 12. The idea of the SEC hypothetical power that did not really exist this season. You want to make that argument, though, in college basketball? I'll listen in 2024-25. As we look at the top 2 teams, Auburn suffered its first loss in SEC play over the weekend against Florida, who, by the way, has 2 wins against the number 1 team in the country this year, beating Tennessee earlier in January by 30. The Tigers still remain, and rightfully so, hefty favorite to win the SEC regular season crown, and still the favorites to win the national championship. But Alabama, plus 195, plus 165 to get back to a Final Four. Nate Oates turning Tuscaloosa into a basketball town. They see each other on Saturday. Again, it's just our 5th 1 versus 2 in the AP men's poll since 2013. Our first ever 1 versus 2 matchup in SEC men's basketball history. And Donnie, we'll get to Tennessee and Kentucky in just a moment. But with all the fanfare and the notoriety and the history at stake in a rivalry game on Saturday afternoon, both teams in action tonight and both on the road as slight favorites. Auburn heads to Vandy to take on the Doors as a 9.5-point favorite. And let me just track down the number for Alabama. 4.5-point spread in favor of the Tide on the road in Austin against Texas. If you have ever believed in the term trap game, that's what we have tonight.
We do. And Alabama has a very good matchup tonight at Moody. But the fact of the matter is they're going to play Saturday with that eye on the prize to get tripped up. That's a tough one to look. And that's one of those public specials there that you want to fade. I actually don't think so. I think Alabama wins tonight, to be honest. Still even with that look ahead.
Listen, Vanderbilt is having a great season. They have been ranked in the top 25 for the SEC Powers. Mark Byington, in his first year from JMU, has done a great job in Nashville. That could be close tonight. I do think the Tigers avoid an upset against Vandy. Top 15 tilt DRS, Tennessee and Kentucky Insider Up Arena. In the Vols, a 2.5-point road favorite. This is the best defense in the sport in Tennessee against the best offense or second best offense in college basketball in Kentucky, but they don't play a lick of defense. What do you see tonight in Lexington?
Let's keep it simple here. It is a road game, understand, but from Tennessee's perspective on offense, they love to shoot the three-point shot. Second in conference play at volume. You know who lets you shoot whatever three-point shot in any gym you want to play? It's Kentucky's defense. But then you flip it over to Tennessee, who will let you shoot that three-point shot, but also they're going to defend the heck out of it. Who makes more three-point shots that wins this game? I think Tennessee comes away with the prize, Ben. How about that?
I like that look, DRS. What a road win it would be for the Volunteers. Quad 1 spot tonight. DRS, have fun on the money line. Enjoy the extra prep. John Rothstein here on TEL up next.
Patino himself, in a clip that we just played, said basically the stats are not backing up the team's wins.
St. John's offensive glass. That's where a lot of opportunities for St. John's came from. St. John's does not shoot the basketball well. It might even be fair to say they shoot it poorly. They were 3 of 16 from deep last night. But it doesn't seem to matter to them.
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you've got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
In a short format tournament like this, like the Olympics, now this is even smaller, only 4 teams. Who's got the best goaltending? You're talking 3 round robin games and then a knockout with 4 teams. So you're playing 5 games.
I'm not sold yet, Mike, on the USA stuff, on the merch, but I think I'm sold on the USA at least being in the final.
Only on SportsGrid.
Football season is now officially in the books. At the end of Super Bowl Sunday, a nation hoping for sports looked to one area and potentially one man above all else. They now start to look only in February, but getting ready for the month of March in college basketball, which means here on this Tuesday on the early line, we are very pleased to welcome on John Rothstein on behalf of the FanDuel Sportsbook, of course, doing incredible work for CBS Sports. John, I believe it was in the wee hours of Sunday night as the confetti fell in New Orleans as Philadelphia was crowned a new Super Bowl champion that you ushered out a message to all of America. What exactly did that say?
Just simply, Ben, that we are in a state of transition right now as a society, and we are about to now go on and undertake the greatest ride that we will have on the calendar year, and that is the lead up from now until Selection Sunday, which includes obviously all of championship week through the end of the NCAA tournament, which obviously is going to be highlighted by the highs and the lows of March Madness. But Ben, you know as well as I do, this is only February.
It certainly is. Fewer than 5 weeks away from Selection Sunday, but a preview perhaps tonight with how great the Tuesday night docket is of what college basketball is at its best. We start in the Big Ten. Top 20 tilt in Ann Arbor. Number 20, Michigan, an ever so slight home favorite, John, against number 7, Purdue. We can see what the odds makers expect for how close this game is anticipated to be tonight in Ann Arbor. In your estimation, John, what is the matchup that decides the outcome tonight between the Wolverines and the Boilermakers?
Well, Michigan was non-competitive when the two teams played a couple of weeks ago at Mackey Arena. That was a 27-point win for the Boilers. But the thing that I'm looking at right now as Purdue has quietly won 11 of its last 12 games is the ancillary pieces in Purdue's rotation. We knew coming into the season that there were 3 constants for Purdue. Braden Smith, who's having a first-team All-American type season, Fletcher Lawyer, and Trey Kaufman-Wren, who's also performing like an All-American. Those 3 players were starters on last year's team that went to the national title game and lost to UConn. But Ben, I'm looking in the weeds. I am looking at the performances over the last 2 games of C.J. Cox and also Caleb First. Those 2 players over their last 2 games combined are combining to average 18 points and 14 rebounds together. Now, all of a sudden, we have a supporting cast. Now, all of a sudden, we have Purdue resurgent. And make no mistake about it, the Boilers don't have what they had when they had Zach Edey in the middle, the first player since Ralph Sampson at Virginia in the early 1980s to win back-to-back National Player of the Year honors in consecutive seasons. But with all that said, Purdue doesn't have what it had, but it still may have enough to get back to a Final Four.
And, John, I think it speaks to the testament that is Matt Painter in year number 20 to lose a guy like Zach Edey, a 2-time reigning National Player of the Year, and still be leading the Big Ten at this moment and ranked 7th in the country, 11-2, the conference mark for the Boilermakers. The team right behind them, Michigan State, who got back in the win column on Saturday. The Spartans at home tonight in East Lansing, hosting Indiana. Let's start with the game itself. How can, if at all possible, John, the Hoosiers keep this game competitive?
Well, for Indiana to have success, I think the one thing we need to see is a consistent flow on offense and, consistent floor spacing, which is going to coincide, obviously, with outside shooting. I think when you look at Indiana, when it played probably its best basketball in the Big Ten this season, it was because it went and downshifted into a smaller lineup that had Mackenzie McBacco at power forward. But look, I want to take a minute here, Ben, and I just want to do a little bit, of a deep dive and break out the fine-tooth comb when we look at the history of Indiana basketball. Indiana has been to the second weekend of the NCAA tournament 4 times since 1994. Indiana, if you look at the coaches that have been there since Bob Knight, nothing has ever been good enough. Mike Davis went to 4 NCAA tournaments in 6 years. He was asked to go. That included a trip to the national title game in 2002. Kelvin Sampson was removed from his post after a couple years, after obviously he broke NCAA rules, which obviously in typical NCAA fashion, shortly thereafter were ruled legal. Then Tom Crean, 3 Sweet 16s, 2 outright Big Ten regular season titles. And in his last year, Indiana was 13-6 with wins over Kansas and Carolina when OG Anunoby tore his ACL. There was an appetite for change. They went and they hired Archie Miller, who was the hot young coach on the rise. He didn't go to the NCAA tournament. So they wanted somebody who could make the NCAA tournament and bring back, obviously, the gap that existed between Indiana and its fan base. Mike Woodson then followed somebody who didn't go to the NCAA tournament, won a game the first year in the first 4 against Wyoming, won a game in his second year against Penn State, and now all of a sudden he misses last year, and this year this is a team again that's still probably 5, 6, 7 spots away from Dayton, and the school opts to force him out in mid-February. So my question is this: why all of a sudden, if those are the facts, is Indiana such a great basketball job? And why would somebody who is currently in a great situation of power conference want to leave that to go to the fishbowl? And as I say, and I've said it before, I'll say it again, just 4 trips to the NCAA tournament second weekend since 1994.
It's the prestige and the history in Bloomington inside Assembly Hall, perhaps. If this does not result in an NCAA tournament trip for IU, John, that would be 6 times in the last 8 big dances, missing out on the field of 68 for Indiana. Some history tonight, perhaps, for Tom Izzo. 2 coaches in Big Ten men's basketball history have won 353 conference games. Izzo and Bob Knight. With 1 more tonight, Tom Izzo stands alone by himself. Quickly here, John, top 15 tilt in the SEC tonight. Interrupt. Tennessee, a 2.5-point favorite against Kentucky. The Vols have the most efficient defense in the country. The Cats, second most efficient offense in the country. What wins tonight in Lexington?
Guard play for Tennessee. If Ziegler, Lanier, and Meshack can control the game, I like Tennessee on the road. And I think Tennessee, again, much like Houston in the Big 12, is flying under the radar. And, Ben, isn't it ironic, not to quote Alanis Morissette there by chance, that Rick Barnes and Kelvin Sampson had all those wars against each other? They were in Texas and Oklahoma. Don't you think?
Maybe coming more so in March. John, thank you. More on the early line next.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
You want me to solve all this tush-push and 4th down malarkey that goes on with the officials? Here's a crazy idea. Get rid of the worst rule in the NFL, and that is forward progress. How about this? Where I knock your ass in the ground is where the ball goes, period. Let's end this whole conversation. Like, if I drop you back 4 yards, then you lost 4 yards. If we get rid of forward progress, this tush-push and everything else is taken care of. Where I put your tail on the ground is where the ball goes. End of conversation. It's the dumbest rule and the most arbitrary rule. The only thing that is a worse call in the NFL than forward progress is the punt that goes out of bounds when you watch the official walk down the sideline having absolutely no clue where that ball crossed over. All I can think of is that Price is Right game go do-de-do-de-do, do-de-do-de-do, as he's walking down the sideline, arbitrarily trying to figure out where the ball crossed over because he's got no clue.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
What a Tuesday night we have in college basketball. John Rothstein set the stage for it. It's often difficult when you highlight only a few games with John and we only get about 8 minutes. It would be great to have 80 minutes to preview every game around the country. And, the walking encyclopedia of college hoops knowledge, John Rothstein, would be able to do so. But there are so many games we could choose to preview. We highlight a few. We talked about Big Ten history at stake tonight. If Tom Izzo and Michigan State win, Tom Izzo stands alone by himself for the most conference wins in Big Ten men's basketball history, 354. He got 353 over the weekend for MSU, doing so back at home after a 2-game slide for the Spartans on the road in the West Coast, a second-half rally against Oregon. There's some beautiful irony, perhaps, in that, right? A new change for Indiana again, trying to replicate the success in Bloomington that Bob Knight had, 353 Big Ten wins for Bob Knight, and Tom Izzo could surpass Bob Knight after matching the record with a victory against the Hoosiers tonight. Just thought I would mention that. Elsewhere around the country, of course, in the SEC, each and every night, you're going to have so many top 25 matchups. We talk top 15 tilt inside Rep Arena, top 25 tilt in Stark Vegas, Mississippi State against Florida. Now, the Bulldogs got off to a great start this year. 14-1, perfect 2-0 beginning in the SEC, but have dropped 5 of their last 8, remaining, though, in the top 25. Florida has its second win of the year against the top-ranked team in the nation, knocking off Auburn on the road on the Plains on Saturday afternoon. The Gators tied for the third best team in the country alongside Duke in the recent AP Top 25. In Florida, an ever so slight favorite on the road tonight against Chris Jans and his Bulldogs. So, second win for Florida against number 1 this year. What did they do in the aftermath of the first victory against number 1 earlier in January? When they hammered Tennessee at home by 30, they went on the road a few days later against Arkansas and won that game comfortably, covering as a 5.5-point favorite. The Gators have a chance to follow that road success tonight. Again, we had talked about the 1 versus 2 for the first time ever in SEC men's basketball history this upcoming Saturday in Tuscaloosa. Number 1 Auburn, number 2 Alabama. The rivalry intensified. But before we get there, we've got 2 games on this Tuesday night for both of the top 2 teams in the country. Auburn, 9.5-point favorite against Vandy. The Commodores playing some really good basketball this year under Mark Byington. Texas starting to figure it out under Rodney Terry, only a 3.5-point favorite. Now 4.5-point favorite in the updated number, hosting Alabama tonight. But boy, you want to talk look-ahead spots, trap game possibilities. Maybe the world has never seen bigger in college basketball, I'm sure they have, than perhaps what we have on this Tuesday evening. Keep an eye on Texas A&M. Back inside the top 10. The Aggies, 7.5-point favorite tonight against Georgia. It was A&M on the road in Columbia against Missouri over the weekend. Wade Taylor the fourth in the final 10 seconds of regulation, burying a triple for the win. A&M plays relentless basketball under Buzz Williams. Going to be a team to trifle with come the NCAA tournament. And let's talk about Kansas State for just a moment if we can. They win the Sunflower Showdown at home in the Octagon of Doom in the Little Apple on Saturday against Kansas. K-State got off to an atrocious start this season under Jerome Tang after having a couple of big transfer portal signings, none more so than Coleman Hawkins, who came over from Illinois. They got off to a 7-11 start. From that point, Kansas State has won 5 in a row. Kansas State has covered in all 5 of those wins. Their last 3 outright as an underdog against Iowa State, Arizona State, Kansas. Kansas State has covered in 8 consecutive games, 6 of those 8 as a dog. They're getting 3.5 tonight against Arizona at home. Now the Wildcats playing great basketball as well under Tommy Lloyd. I'm hesitant to bet this at the moment, but I do want to because of how good K-State has been covering numbers. A number I did bet last night, Creighton 2.5-point favorite, now 3.5 at home against UConn. The Blue Jays have won 9 in a row. There is no better cover team in conference play than CU this year. 11-1-1 against the spread. Wednesday, the early line returns. That's tomorrow, 8 a.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.